Welcome everyone from all around the world to today's live IELTS class being broadcasted to you live from Budapest, capital city of Hungary, by yours truly, Adrian Benedek. My name and our materials are coming from our websites as usual. So if you're studying for academic IELTS, please do make sure to visit us at aehelp.com. That's academicenglishhelp.com. Join our full course and start your journey to truly mastering IELTS, learning the right strategies. Hi Shuk, hi Simranjit Kaur, hi Trung Nguyen Van, hi Vikar Singh, Bharat Kada, Subhash Subedi. Hope I'm more or less pronouncing some of those names correctly. Hi, Sandeep Buttar. Good to see so many of you in class. Hi, Jeffrey. How are you doing? Good to see members. Also, I saw there's a couple new members to our channel. So if you're watching, please definitely send me an email so I can hook you up with our exams. If you're studying for general IELTS, please visit us at gieltshelp.com. That's general IELTS help.com. Again, on both of these websites, they're specifically designed for your target module, GIELTS for general IELTS, AEHelp for academic IELTS, and you'll find lots and lots of video lessons there, high quality pre-recorded as you see on our channel, some of them, and you'll find 6 original practice exams, fully interactive course for your phone and computer and tablet. So definitely check us out there. Today we are targeting speaking part 2 and part 3. One of our members sent us these questions. She asked us to talk about this a little bit earlier on. It slipped off the schedule, so we made sure to put it back on there. If you are using your phone and you're visiting your Play Store looking for apps for IELTS, check for Academic IELTS Help, look for our logo, and download our app as well. All right, one more tidbit. You can also buy our books from Amazon. Just search for AE Helps Academic IELTS or GE Helps General IELTS. Again, there's my email. It's adrian@aehelp.com. If you ever have questions about our products or services, I am more than happy to answer your questions and hopefully give you some valuable answers. All right, here is the schedule for the remainder of this week's live broadcast. Today, again, speaking part 2 and 3, targeting the topic of being frightened. Kind of an interesting one for today. Tomorrow, there will be a members chat only by request. Again, that's one of the perks of being our member. You can request for special classes. There's been a couple of requests for some Task 2 topics, so we'll take one of those. Everybody's welcome to watch. You're just not able to comment unless you become a member, but I'm sure you can still get a lot of valuable information. And then on Monday and Tuesday, no class. We take a break during those days, focus on some other types of development, and take a deep breath. Now, here is the part 2 question for today. Just before we look at that, real quick, a glimpse at our websites if you're searching for them. If you're looking for academic IELTS, look for our page. It's aehelp.com. You should see this blue background. You can play a video there to see what kind of services, products we have. And if you're looking for general IELTS, search for that green background. All right, let's get to part 2. Let's get on with this lesson. Hi, Naveen. Hi, Manisha. Hey, there's the originator of these questions. All right, so let's take a look at part 2. Just a quick overview of the speaking part of the IELTS exam. For those of you who are new to IELTS, the speaking section of IELTS is done in an interview format, face-to-face, one-on-one, with an expert English speaker, usually a native speaker. You are in a private room, sitting across from each other. You have a very specific time that you need to be there. Make sure you go early. How early should you show up to your speaking exam? Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think? What's a good plan there? That's it's some people think it's not that important to look at that strategy in detail, but it is. So what do you think? What's the amount of time that you should give yourself before your speaking starts? So Jeffrey says an hour. Sam Chowdhury says 30 minutes. Irzum says at least 30 minutes. Mohammed says that hour is probably a good idea. Yeah, I would say plan for an hour. If the bus is late, the train is late, you have trouble finding parking, you have trouble finding the address, then you at least have 30 minutes. So plan for an hour. If you have 30 minutes, that's fine, but definitely don't cut it too close, okay? What should you do if you're ambitious, you're like, woo, I'm doing my speaking today, and you show up 30, 40 minutes early? What should you do? Should you just twiddle your thumbs, which means do this, and twiddle your thumbs for 30 minutes and see how fast you can go? Or should you do something else? So thumb twiddling or something else in that 30 minutes? What do you think? What should you be doing in that 30 minutes? Muhammad Yusuf says, yeah, probably not twiddle your thumbs. Talking with people is a good idea. Nurai says, relax. Muhammad says, speak in English. Chill. Irzum says, I think maybe we can find some other students and talk to them. Yeah, Muhammad, you're on the right track. Yeah, warm up with other students. So show up at least 30 minutes early. Amira Hamid says, eat something. And you're smiling and laughing, but you're right, Amira. Don't walk into your speaking exam hungry and thirsty, okay? Also, don't walk in there loaded with coffee or energy drinks. Okay, that's a really bad idea as well. I've seen students do that, where they walk in full of Red Bull or full of some kind of coffee, and they're hyperactive, and that's not the best either, okay? You don't want to be hyper during your exam, plus you can get really nervous and sweaty, and also drinking coffee and energy drinks makes you want to go to the washroom, so careful with that. So what should you do? Yeah, Sarah Omer, relax, take deep breaths, have a couple of snacks, drink a bit of water, and find some other students. Take a piece of paper with you. Let me see if I can find one here on my work desk. Okay, here's one that I've got all kinds of stuff. But anyway, you can see a piece of paper here. It's got some part 1, part 2, part 3 questions on it. Take a couple of those with you, print it out. Not on your phone, okay? Take a couple of pieces of paper, because if for some reason you don't have internet or your phone dies on you, you're not able to take your phone into the exam anyway. Take a hard copy piece of paper with questions. Find other students. Don't be shy. Be confident. Approach them and say, excuse me, are you here in English? Okay. Are you here for your IELTS speaking exam? Do you mind if we ask each other some questions just to get the language flowing, give each other some feedback, all right? That's a really, really good idea. Okay, so you're being smart, you do this, and then you are ready to get in that interview room. Charisma just put her Skype ID up there. Charisma says, does anybody want to practice English? Add me. It's absolutely okay to do that, students, in this chat. Try to share some contact info with each other so you can find some study buddies and some study partners. Just be really careful not to share private information with each other, okay? Banking information, private things that could end up hurting you. So be responsible. But I did allow that comment, Charisma, because it is a good idea. Okay, so now it's time to go and sit for the interview. You're feeling great. You're feeling confident. You built confidence by asking another student to practice with you. You exchanged some English. You get in there, and there will be a man or a woman waiting there with some questions ready, a pen, some note paper, etc. And they'll welcome you into the room. They'll try to make you feel comfortable. They'll definitely have a serious demeanor, maybe a friendly demeanor, means attitude. They want you to feel as comfortable as possible, of course. It's difficult to truly assess somebody's English in 12 minutes, but hey, if you sat there all day speaking with them, the exam would probably cost $1,000, and it would work very differently and it wouldn't really function as well. So you have about 12 minutes to prove your English. Now, they'll start with some icebreakers. So they'll start with, let's start, can I ask your full name, please? So they'll say, hi, my name is Adrian. I will be your examiner for the speaking part of the test. Can I ask your full name, please? What should you answer for this? So what should you answer for this first question? Be ready for it. This one, definitely you'll be asked. Everybody is. Can I start with your full name, please? They might ask for your ID first, or your passport first. You want to answer this one in a nice full sentence, okay? Majinder Singh says, my name is Majinder Singh. Please call me Sherry. Okay, that'll work. Sure. Mohammed, I saw yours. It was a nice long answer. I know you've practiced that one, so I wouldn't expect anything less. Amjad Ali says, well, my full name is Amjad Ali, and you can call me Amjad. Sure. If you want to be a little bit more polite, Amjad, you can say, please just call me Amjad. It's a little bit less direct, and you can just call me. And you can just call me as if you're in a higher position. If you're the boss in a company and you're interviewing someone, you can say, my name is Adrian Smith, and you can just call me Adrian. All right, so good. And then they'll ask you some kind of icebreaker question. So they'll say, all right, can I see your identification, please? Thank you. I'll put this here till the end of the exam. Now we will begin the speaking test. For part one, I'd like to get to know you a little bit better and ask you some questions on a general topic. And then they'll ask you something like, do you currently drive a car or take public transport? What should you answer that one? Are you driving to get to work or school, or do you take the bus or public transport? What should you answer for that question? Obviously, you can answer a couple of different ways depending on if you drive or if you take public transport or the bus. What would be a good way to answer that? So Subhash says, I go by foot. We actually say I go on foot, at least in West Coast Canadian English or American English. Subhash, so I go on foot, or I walk to work or school. Okay, and I would give a little bit more information there, Subhash. So I would say I usually walk to work since I live fairly close to my office. It takes me roughly 10 minutes, and it's a good way to start the day with a little bit of exercise. All right, much better answer that way, Subhash. So a little bit more there. Aviman Singh Lama says, I drive my own car to get to my office. I have a 2012 Mazda, and it's very comfortable, convenient, and fuel efficient, so I don't mind driving. Again, a little bit more, Avimash, okay? So try to get into a bit of detail. Naveen says, well, I would like to ride public transport with my friends rather than using my bike. However, I'm usually late for the bus, so I tend to take my bike anyway. Naveen, it's an unfinished idea. Make sure to finish that idea. Okay, Sunset Swallow, be careful with that. You're saying, well, I take different modes of transport. Sometimes I walk if I have enough time. If I wake up late, I might take the bus. And I do occasionally drive my car when there's not a lot of traffic and I go to work later in the day. Sunset Swallow, you're getting yourself into a complex situation with that, so be very careful giving that kind of an answer where you say, well, there's different ways I go to work, okay? All right. So that's just a little bit of warm-up. Let's get into the meat and bones of today's lesson. You've probably noticed, a lot of you who are watching these classes regularly, that I'm throwing some different kinds of English at you in these classes as of late. That's because I'm trying to express myself differently so you listen to different kinds of expressions idioms, word grammar structures, and that's why I'm doing that. So that's just kind of reflecting what I said there. Let's get into the meat and bones of this lesson. Okay. So you do a good job in part one. Part one is, of course, easier than part 2 and 3. It's to get you a little bit more comfortable, and also IELTS is testing students from level band 1 to band 9, actually band 0, but the only way that you can get band 0, there's 2 ways. One is you don't show up for the exam, that'll get you a band 0, or if you show up for the exam and you do this. I think even if you wave at the examiner, they might give you a 0.5 for making some kind of communication. So there's really not a lot of ways to get 0 unless you, of course, don't show up. Or if you don't bring your passport and they send you home, that might get you a 0. Part 1, of course, it's to make people comfortable, and also some people, you know, they're band 4, so there has to be a part of the test that can show band 4. Now, then you get into part 2. So after about 5 questions in part 1, the examiner will say, okay, that is the end of part 1. Now we will begin part 2. For part 2, I'm going to give you a card with some questions on it. You will have 1 minute to prepare your answers. You may take notes if you wish. Here is some note paper and a pencil. And then you will have 2 minutes to speak. I will tell you when to start and when to stop. Are you ready to begin? Yes, I am. Then your 1 minute preparation time begins. Now, please turn over the card. All right. You turn over the card and you see a set of questions. Okay, it's going to be about 4 questions on the card related to a specific topic. They will give you the topic and the controlling idea right away. So you need to identify that. Oh, okay, what is it? Describe an occasion when you were scared. What's the topic? You. What's the controlling idea? An occasion when you were scared. All right, fairly straightforward. What do you do next? What should you do now? So, you know, I want to really get into this today, so I don't want to stop at every little stage here. So I gave you the topic, I gave you the controlling idea. What do you do? Jeffrey, you're bang on, okay? You've identified it, and there students who are watching and are in the stream, you can see that our members are well trained by this point. They know that the first thing that you should do is figure out, am I expected to talk about a person, a place, an object, or an event? All right? It's going to be one of those 4, 99%. You'll be asked in one of those 4 categories to talk for 2 minutes. And each of those 4 has a very kind of specific set of ideas that you need to focus on. And of course, the regular students here realize that this is an event, okay? An occasion, that tells you right away, okay? This is an event, so it's an occurrence, it's an event, it's a happening, all right? So that's what you need to do. So after you've figured out the topic and the controlling idea, of course, let's jump back a little bit here. And this one's fairly straightforward. Sometimes it's a little bit more tricky. You have to be careful to pay close attention and make sure you know what you're talking about. Like that example the other day where you had to talk about a website. And that was a little bit more tricky to figure out that talking about a useful website is actually an object. It's a virtual object. In this case, it's a little bit easier. So whether you're talking about, one, an event, to a person, and you should practice all 4 of these at home. They're kind of equal weighted. It's very difficult to guess. It's actually impossible to guess. You're just going to be lucky if you do which one will be on your next exam. And the IELTS people like to switch it up and give about 25% attention to each of these. So 25% of the time it'll be a person, 25% of the time it'll be an event, and so on. If last week the exam was about a person, will it be an event this week? No, it could be a person again. It could be person, person, event, 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 object, event, person. So they'll mix it up throughout the weeks. You won't be able to guess really. So don't do that. Just be ready for all of them, okay? All 4 of these. So an event, a person, a location, or fourthly, an object, okay? It basically does cover most everything in the world, so that's kind of around us. So it's a good idea to know how to talk about these. So if I'm talking about an event, right? So I've said, okay, I'm going to be talking about an event here. What do I need to think about? So I can look at the questions and I can see that it says when and where it happened, who you were with, why you were scared, how you felt about it, okay? So aside from that, the general rules of an event, when you're talking about an event, what questions should I always think about regardless of these specific questions? So even if I don't look at these card questions and I know that I'm talking about an event, what should I consider talking about importantly to make sure my listener has a clear idea of this situation? So lots of questions there's, guys, but stay on focus. Deval, all of our materials are on our websites. We do offer private one-on-one speaking sessions that you can book through our websites, okay? We do have lots of help, but let's stay focused here. So Saul says, what, how, when, why. I think your order's a little bit off there, Saul, but you're kind of right, okay? So Sarah Murray says, visualize the event. That's absolutely important. Yeah, so what is the event? Where is it? Right? Why is it held? Who is there? Right? What you did there, and perhaps how you felt about it, or how you felt there. Okay? So if you think about these questions, what's the event? Where is it? Why was it? Who was there? What you did there? And how you felt there. If you answer all these questions with a good amount of detail, remember that class we did a few days ago about adding description and detail, then you will do an excellent job. Okay, so again, let's keep this simple. So you start part 2, you turn over that card, you realize it's an event, you right away know, okay, I've got to talk about what this is, where it happened, when it happened, why it happened, who was there, what happened there, and how I felt, okay, or how people felt. Might not always be about you. Okay, so you got to think about all these questions and kind of in this order. So the order does matter. If I start talking about how I felt there before I even talk about what it is, it could be very confusing for your listeners. So the order of these questions matters. And it's often a better idea to think about this sequence of questions more than the actual questions that you see on the card, okay? The reason why is because if you're trying to answer these questions first, second, third, fourth, it might actually be really confusing, okay? This is just there to guide you. It's not, you don't have to answer in this order, all right? Okay, now I can see that a few of you are jumping a little bit ahead and you're trying to answer the question already. So Shabazz is saying, my event was making some meat with friends. Okay, you're going to have to really explain why you were scared there. Earzoom says it was around 4 years before I was scared after that, and I fought very well. There I have won all rounds and won the gold. Earzoom, I have no idea what you're talking about. No offense, but really. If you're not planning, that's what happens. You just start saying some really confusing, incoherent ideas. Amira says, I was scared in the war of 2012 in my city of Gaza. It was awful to see a lot of people die. I feel terrible for you, Amira, but again, you're getting yourself into a very emotional and difficult conversation. I wouldn't do that, okay? Subash says, I was very scared when I had to deliver a speech. Now we're getting into a little bit of a better topic. So before you start talking about the event when you were scared, you should do something else first. What should you do? So your step number one is you figured out that it's an event. You thought about the questions, right? So you figured out, hey, this is an event. Okay, your step number two is you realized that I need to answer these questions roughly in this sequence to give a good answer. What should be your step three to make sure that you get a nice high score on the IELTS exam before you jump at just some answer? Okay, and again, I can see a lot of people thinking about, okay, when was I scared? When was I scared? Sometimes making up an answer is easier than trying to actually think of an honest or true answer. And sometimes when you start making up an answer, you'll actually think about a true answer and go, aha, oh yeah, of course. So Roshni Kunte says, visualize it. Manisha, you're asking me a question. Can we talk about feeling frightened during the first swim or driving? Sure, you can. But you should cook up a story, Mohammed Yusuf says. And yeah, cooking up a story might be good. All Summer says, maybe a public speech in college. There's a question that you need to think of, okay? Questions are often a good way to begin your thinking. Instead of trying to think of an answer, think of a question. This is the question you should think of here. Okay, this will get you into a much stronger position. So the question is, what are the most common situations when people are scared? What would 9 from 10 people say? Okay, so if you ask 10 people in different parts of the world, when are you scared? What would they say? Kashni Kanam says maybe a roller coaster ride could be an answer. I don't know if that's true, but maybe. Naveen Kumar says a nightmare, maybe. Speaking about a dream could be tricky because they're very abstract, but sure. Okay, nightmare is a bad dream. There you go, Aditya. That's kind of what I was thinking of. Scary movies. Okay. And then the other one is public speech. Okay. So it is commonly argued, and of course sometimes war or conflict or strife, but Baccarat says a horror movie or speaking on stage. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So people at some point in their lives, most of us will watch a scary movie or a horror movie. If not, then probably public speech. So I would say that these two, public speech and scary movie, are your number 1 and number 2 picks. I'll get the picture back here in 2 seconds, so just give me a moment. So if you've identified that, if you've identified a if you've identified one of these two, so you've identified public speech or you've identified a scary movie, then you are putting yourself into a position to get a nice high band score on this speaking with much more ease. What do you think is easier to talk about, the scary movie or the public speech? What do you think? So let's kind of take a poll here. Let's see what most of the viewers would say about this one. What do you think is easier to talk about, public speech or scary movie? Well, the answer here is, right, it depends. It depends on your situation. So if you haven't watched a lot of scary movies, then it might be a public speech. If you've watched scary movies, then it could be a scary movie. And you can see that the audience here, all of you commenting, you're kind of divided. So half of you, maybe public speech is being a little bit more favored, right? So I would say scary movie is probably easier to talk about, especially if you think about these questions. So when and where it happened, who you were with. Let me just show you, okay? We can target public speech. I can see that a lot of you are really favoring public speech, so we'll target that one. But just for fun, I'm going to spontaneously, totally improv a response for scary movies, okay? So remember, I'm not really looking at these questions. I'm going to be answering the questions according to this step number 2 here. Okay, so about 10 years ago, I took my girlfriend, who is now my wife, to the movie theaters and watched an old film called The Shining. The lead actor in that film is Jack Nicholson. This was a horror movie, which was very scary. I thought it was a good idea because I was hoping that my girlfriend would jump in my lap. However, as I later discovered, it was me who actually got even more frightened. This was at a downtown retro movie theater in Victoria. And they were having a special week of scary movies from the 1970s. I think there were about a dozen people in the theater, aside from myself and my girlfriend. We watched the movie. It was about 2 hours long. The movie specifically is about a family who takes care of a hotel during off-season in the mountains. And of course, this hotel is haunted by ghosts. There are many scary scenes in the movie, unexpected twists and turns, which made me squeal and jump in my seat. I was actually quite embarrassed because a couple of times I ended up jumping into my girlfriend's lap. I felt scared and horrified. I had nightmares for about 2 weeks afterwards. Okay, so thanks for listening to me, but I just kind of jargon there and I visualized it. Because you're describing a movie, I think what you realize there, I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Shining. It is a very scary movie. That was true what I said there. But because you're describing a scary movie that scared you, it immediately makes it easier. Okay, because the movie is the script. So the movie gives you a script of why you were scared. So when the dad was chasing after the mom with an axe, it was a very scary scene as she was trying to escape. I was just holding on to my chair. Okay, so exactly, Pachu. Many people died in this movie, etc. So it gives you the script for the speaking. All that you have to do now is build around it. It's a movie. You're in a movie theater. You're with a friend or a girlfriend. It's very simple to talk about. Now, let's take the little bit more difficult approach and go with public speaking. Yes, Jeffrey, a very famous quote from the movie. Here's Johnny. Okay, let's talk about public speech. So I showed you how to do it. Let's talk about public speech. Okay, so you said, hey, I think public speech would be a good one to tackle here. So what's a good way to start? Give me a sentence or start giving me your sentences here, students. And again, remember, we are speaking here, so I hope that many of you are trying to repeat these sentences that we are saying in this class, or that I'm saying, okay? So repeat, repeat. So what's a good way to start if I'm talking about public speaking? So public speaking, you should try to think and visualize a very common type of situation, okay, that people get themselves into for public speaking. So Pablo, you're right. People do blank out when doing speeches, but just saying that sentence alone will not really be enough. Okay, so Hamjung Devkota says, I was scared when I had to deliver a workshop presentation in high school. Okay. Let's go with college. It's a little bit maybe closer to home. High school is okay too if you're not in college yet. So Naveen says, a couple of years back, I took a public speaking program in my college. Okay, it's a good way to start as well, Naveen. Just watch your word choice there because the way you wrote it is quite confusing. Yam Bahadur says, well, the most scary time for me was when I had to give a lecture in school. Okay, again, see, you're already getting yourselves into a little bit of trouble here with the way you're expressing your first thought. Jeffrey says, it was my second grade of high school and I was assigned to do or to give a public speech. All right, so any of those will work. Let's focus on this one. I remember a very scary moment in my life when I had to deliver a workshop speech. Okay, a workshop in college for my classmates. All right. So how can I continue this sentence? So let's all work on the same page here. What's a good way to continue here? Okay. So what would be a good sentence to continue this idea? Okay, and think about those correlative conjunctions, coordinating conjunctions, so ways to join your ideas together. Okay, so Manisha says, it was my first time giving a speech in front of a large crowd. All right, so here we go. Not only was I extremely nervous, again, make sure you're repeating me, especially when I'm typing, it's a little bit slower. So not only was I extremely nervous because it was my first time giving a public speech in front of a large audience, but also because 50% of my course grade depended on my performance. And my professor was judging me or grading me. Okay. All right. Okay, sure. So that's good. So you're emphasizing your nervousness and why you're nervous. All right. So again, so far so good. So we've answered what the event is. It's a workshop. We've answered where is it. It's in college. We've answered when it happened, more or less. But we can talk a little bit more about that at some point. We didn't give specific numbers. Why is it held? We haven't talked about that one. So that would be a good way to continue, is trying to answer this question. So why was this workshop held? So why was this workshop held? Why did you actually have to do this workshop? So let's continue with that. Yam Bahadur has a good question, meanwhile, while you're thinking about that. It says, sir, in speaking, which tense is better to use? Well, you have to look at the question, Bahadur. It depends on that question. So here, the question is, describe an occasion when you were scared. So it's past tense, so you're talking about a past event. A student asked me about this PPF model, if I should talk about a story in the past, the present, and the future. No, it would not work for this one because it's asking you about this event when you were scared. It's not asking you about present time, and it's not asking you about the future, okay? Even these questions, how you felt about it, why you were scared, who you were with. So it's all past tense. So this story has to be 95% past tense, okay? Let's see what the answers are. Naveen says, although I prepared the whole night before, I was so frightened and awkward because it was the first time I faced my college mate from the other side of the board. Yeah, Naveen, I think it's okay, but you're being a little bit redundant, so you're repeating information we've said more or less. Amjad says, one of the most scary moments in my life happened when I was in university. Amjad, you're going off on your own tangent. Let's focus on the same information here so that we're all on the same page. So Jeffrey says, from my studies, the topic was on nutritious eating. Yeah, exactly. So talk about why you were doing this, right? So what was this class? Why were you doing this? Okay. We're curious about that. Okay. All Summer says, I was not well prepared, and that was one of the reasons I was scared. Also, the microphone didn't work. All Summer, those are okay details, but you don't want to just jump around with different points. To get a high band score in IELTS, it should be connected. Okay. You should have connection and depth in your ideas. Bishnu, that's good information. I was very nervous and my whole body was shaking. Here's a really nice English expression. I had butterflies in my stomach. Okay? So, I remember my hands were trembling and I felt as though I had butterflies in my stomach. Having butterflies in your stomach is actually an idiom in English, meaning that you're scared. Only use idioms if you're 100% sure you are using them correctly. The point of my presentation was about healthy nutrition, as this was a human biology class, and all students had to choose relevant topics. Okay, sure, okay. So now we know why you were doing this presentation. So the point of your presentation was about healthy nutrition. This was a biology class, and all students had to choose some relevant topics. Right. Okay. So now what do? We go back. Again, remember, you need to answer these questions first. As best as you can. Do it in the first minute and a half tops, and then look at the questions on the card to make sure that you've answered most of them or all of them, and if you've missed some, then you add them in. So we talked about why it was held, who was there, what you did there. Now, who was there? Did we answer that? More or less. But all we know so far is your professor and classmates there. Including my teacher, there were about 35 people in the class, or if you want to be big, you could say something more like the auditorium had over 100 students. So including my teacher, there were at least 50 people in the classroom. Okay, so answering that question as well. All right, the reason I gave you that one, that's the little bit easier one. I'm sure all of you can come up with something for that. What you did there, okay? This is one that if for this situation, you definitely want to give some detail for. So give me one or two nice sentences to answer this question. By the way, if some of you are just joining in, you can see this part 2 cue card in the stream description, okay? So what did you actually do? Okay, what did you actually do? Talk about that a little bit. All right, we've talked about your body trembling. We've talked about butterflies in your stomach, sunset swallows, so we don't want to go back to that. So talk a little bit more about what actually happened. So give a little bit of detail. Shareem, Islam, absolutely we will use some phrases to conclude and so on. But what happened? Japi Guhman, I was shivering, trembling is a little bit maybe better word for this situation. Shivering is when you're cold, Japi Guhman. Trembling is when you're scared, okay? I used that word earlier. Okay? You don't have to use complex words, Fatima, but you do have to use correct words. Okay, so Amjad says, I just closed my eyes, went on stage, and delivered a tremendous speech. Good, Amjad. So now you're on the right track, and now you're cluing in and focusing in on this conversation. And absolutely, it's the first kind of right approach that I'm thinking of here. Kritika, how long should the answer be for one question? Well, this is a part 2, so you got about 2 minutes to speak. Okay. So Jod says, I did some deep breathing exercises to calm myself down and began talking. Sure, that would be a good way to say it, Jod Singh. Jeffrey says, I gave this speech with a big screen behind me to show some pictures and data. Absolutely, yeah. So visualize this. So you're using a PowerPoint presentation, a projector, some slides, okay? Manisha says, one more reason I was scared was that I'm not computer savvy and I wasn't able to, I was nervous about using the projector and the computer. Okay, Manisha, that's fine. You can add that detail in there, but talk about what you actually did, okay? Let's do that. So there were at least 50 people in the classroom. Alast, is that one word? Maybe. No. Alast, I took a deep breath. And started my presentation. I used a projector and some PowerPoint slides to explain the dietary information. I remember that in the beginning, I hid behind the podium, but once I got going and gained some confidence, I walked to the center of stage and expressed myself clearly with a loud voice. In the end, I delivered A. Okay. Finish the sentence for me, students. So what would be a good way to finish this sentence? Okay. So here, again, I was talking about what I did there. All right. Now finish the sentence. In the end, I delivered a what? Remember what we talked about. So don't forget what you talk about. Don't forget your notes that you write down. Of course, here you should have some of this information on your notes. So Amar Wadi says, I delivered a great presentation. Good. Let's put a little bit more on the end of that. There's some more information that could really be useful. So I delivered a great speech. There's a little bit more here that I would add based on what I said before. Remember what you said earlier. I remember a very scary moment in my life when I had to deliver a workshop in college for my classmates. Not only was I extremely nervous, workshop isn't the best word here because we're talking about a speech. Workshop is a little bit different. Let's say presentation. In college for my classmates. Not only was I extremely nervous because it was first time giving a public speech in front of a large audience, but also because 50% of my course grade depended on my performance and my professor was grading me. Okay? Still looking for that nice way to finish this last sentence. Hint, hint. So my professor was grading me. I remembered my hands were trembling and I felt as though I had butterflies in my stomach. I really hope everybody is repeating me at home right now or wherever you are. The point of my presentation was about healthy nutrition, as this was a human biology class and all students had to choose relevant topics. Including my teacher, there were at least 50 people in the classroom. Last, I took a couple of deep breaths and started my presentation. I used a projector and some PowerPoint slides to explain the dietary information. I remember in the beginning, I hid behind the podium, but once I got going and gained some confidence, I walked into the center of stage and expressed myself clearly with a loud voice. In the end, I delivered a great presentation. And this was reflected by the 95% grade my professor gave me. Okay, am I done? Okay, yeah, Jeffrey, you got it. Anybody else get it? My professor gave me an A++ with a big smile. Okay, yeah, so if you remember what you said before, that your professor is grading you, you might want to throw that information in there that, hey, look, I got a good grade. I got an excellent grade, so I felt good about that. Okay, so am I done at this point? Is this it? Bishnu says, wrap it up with saying, and that was a very scary time in my life. No, not quite. What should you do at this point? So what should you do? You're not quite done yet. There's something really important. Mohammed says a take-home message. I think you're kind of thinking of, yeah, that's right, Manisha. Don't forget to look at that card. So many students forget to look at the questions on the card. You have to look at that, okay? If you miss any of those questions, then you're going to drop your score. So we talked about when and where it happened. We talked about who you were with. We talked about why you were scared. We need to clearly express how you felt about this situation, okay? So you have to answer that last question, all right? Clearly, okay? So let's do that now. How can we answer this last question? Give me some information. So in the end, I felt awesome about this and it really helped build my confidence. Khaled, it's a good start. I felt awesome about it. Awesome is a good word to use here, I think. Just express yourself a little bit more, Khaled. Mokabil. I felt awesome. Although I was very frightened in the beginning, I felt awesome at the end of it, and this experience really helped to build my confidence, okay? So although I felt very scared in the beginning or before the presentation, I felt awesome when it was done, or when I was done. It's done, and it really helped build my confidence. Okay? So that would be a nice way to finish as well. So that last sentence doesn't just answer that last question, it's also a great way to finish this. So you don't have to say something like, and that was a very scary moment in my life. You could, I mean, if you still have time and the examiner's looking at you, and that was one of the most frightening moments in my life. So you could add that in, but it's unnecessary. I think at this point, you're fine if you just stop there. You've answered all the questions. You've created a beautifully constructed mini presentation. And in this case, please don't talk about, or you could talk about your last IELTS exam that you took, although I wouldn't suggest it. Just finishing here is great, okay? So let's go through this one more time, nice and loud. Repeat after me. Pay attention to how we're joining these ideas, how we're answering the questions of talking about an event. So let's go through it now together. Again, repeat me nice and loud. I'm going to go a little bit slower as if I'm talking to a person sitting in front of me. So here we go. I remember a very scary moment in my life when I had to deliver a speech in college for my classmates. Not only was I extremely nervous because it was my first time giving a public speech in front of a large audience, but also because 50% of my course grade depended on my performance, and my professor was grading me. I remember my hands were trembling, and I felt as though I had butterflies in my stomach. The point of my presentation, I remember, was about healthy nutrition, as this was a human biology class that I took getting ready for my pre-med or my med school. All of the students had to choose some relevant topics. With my teacher, there were probably a minimum of 50 people in the classroom. At last, I took a couple of deep breaths and started my speech. I used a projector and some PowerPoint slides to explain the information. I remember that in the beginning I was hiding behind the podium, but once I got going and gained some confidence, I walked into the center of the stage and expressed myself clearly and with loud voice. In the end, I delivered a great performance, and this was reflected by the 95% grade that I got from my professor. Although I felt very scared before the presentation, I felt awesome when I was done, and it really helped build my confidence. That was definitely one of the most frightening moments in my life. Okay, so I tuned it a little bit to make it more natural. Nonetheless, that is exactly what you need to do. Okay, so then the it could be a professor, the IELTS examiner will say, that is the end of part 2. Your 2 minutes is up. Please give back the card with the questions. Now we will continue with part 3. For part 3, I'll ask you some more questions related to the topic of part 2. And then they'll follow up with these questions. Is it good to frighten others? How do people usually get frightened? Do children like to scare others? Why is it easy to scare some people? Okay, I would love to go into part 3 with you today, but I'm out of time. I got some other things I got to get to, ladies and gentlemen. That's all the time I have for today. So I will sign off by showing you these questions again, and I challenge you to take a look at these and give some responses. Send them to me by email for homework. Try them out. Okay, I'll let you know how you did. Again, you're thinking, what would 9 out of 10 people say? So most people will probably say, no, it's not good to frighten other people. They could get a heart attack. They can start crying. It's not good to laugh at the expense of others. So think about some good answers. Send them to my email. I'll let you know how you would do with that. Again, here is my email. Adrian@aehelp.com. And remember, join our websites for lots more videos. I think we have like 150 hours of videos on these websites now. A lot of our live stream classes go into our archives on our web pages, so you can find them in your full course. So go to aehelp.com for academic IELTS, gieltshelp.com for general IELTS. Sign up for the full course, spend a couple dollars, save a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of stress, and get an IELTS band score that you can be proud of. Spend time on that. Thank you, everybody, for watching today. I appreciate your comments, your interactions. I think a lot of you are really developing well. Keep it up. Of course, as you know, inside your skulls dwell the most amazing supercomputers in our known universe. Use them, train them, be proud of these brains that we have, and keep up the good work. I'll see you tomorrow. Members, make sure to join. It is a special class for you. So be present, be interactive. I look forward to seeing you. Everybody is welcome. Bye for now. Have a great rest of your day and have sweet dreams if you're getting ready for bed. Bye-bye.